A fearsome villain creates a foolproof plan to steal the moon, not knowing he's about to meet three orphans who will change his life forever. That is why today on The Summarizer, Despicable Me. The story starts in Egypt where everything seems normal as a group of tourists enjoy their visit. But due to an accident, they discover that one of the pyramids is fake because someone has stolen the original. Because of this, countries around the world are guarding their famous monuments with lots of security to stop any other villains from pulling a similar heist. Meanwhile, we meet Gru, who's walking down the street and sees a kid crying over a lost ice cream. So he gives him a balloon shaped like a dog, only to pop it in his face seconds later, because Gru is really a villain who loves to cause trouble. Then he freezes the people at a cafe to skip the line, drives a super weird vehicle, and arrives at his house, which is the darkest and creepiest in the neighborhood. When he gets home, he threatens his neighbor since his dog has been wandering in his yard, then reunites with his scary pet for lunch. But they're interrupted by three girls selling cookies. To avoid talking to them, he pretends to be the answering machine. Next, he gets a call from Dr. Nefario, who's super disappointed because someone stole an Egyptian pyramid, making other villains look like total losers. Hearing this, Gru heads to a secret place in his house filled with minions, these quirky yellow pill-like creatures who work for him in what looks like a massive lab. They all gather around Gru, making him feel like a celebrity. This is the perfect moment for him to announce his next big plan, one that's even bigger than stealing the pyramids. Brains they need to organize to get a top-secret shrink ray that will help them pull off the heist of the century, stealing the moon. For a moment, everyone's excited, but Dr. Nefario quickly points out how expensive it would be, so Gru decides to get another loan from the bank. Meanwhile, the three cookie-selling girls named Margot, Edith, and Agnes return to the orphanage where they're treated badly by the lady in charge. On his way to the bank, Gru gets a call from his mom, who wants to congratulate him for stealing the pyramid, but she mocks him when she finds out he didn't do it. Gru then arrives at the Bank of Evil, hidden away to meet with the director and pitch his plan. A flashback shows him as a kid, dreaming of going to the moon, only to be mocked by his mom. There, he meets a weird guy named Vector, who tries to impress Gru by saying he's also there for a loan to commit big crimes. Gru ignores him and tries to get away. Minutes later, he presents his moon-stealing idea to the director, who likes it but immediately asks for the shrink ray, and since Gru doesn't have it yet, he gets no loan. Director says there are younger, more efficient villains like Vector, who's actually the pyramid thief. He tells Gru to come back for the loan once he has the shrink ray, so now Gru leaves super annoyed and freezes Vector's head in anger. Days later, somewhere in the world, successful tests are run with the shrink ray, making an elephant tiny. But our hero shows up with some minions to steal it and rushes out. Sort of, because his plan is foiled when Vector uses a high-tech machine to steal the shrink ray, sparking a chase that ends with Vector winning. That night, the three orphans pray for someone good to adopt them soon, because they don't want to stay at the orphanage. The next day, Gru disguises himself to sneak into Vector's fortress and steal the shrink ray. Gru tries over and over again, but keeps getting hurt by Vector's security measures. Later, he sees the three orphans easily get into the fortress, so this gives him a new idea. He asks his trusted scientist to make robot cookies and then goes to the orphanage to adopt the three girls. He presents his adoption request, helped by the minions who write a flawless letter, and convinces the lady in charge with his speech. The three girls are thrilled to meet their new parents, but are disappointed when they see Gru, except the youngest who runs to hug him. Meanwhile, Vector is playing with the shrink ray, shrinking everything, when he gets a mysterious call asking him to return it. He says he wants to take down Gru first. Later, Gru and his new daughters arrive home. They meet his ferocious pet, and he sets up a place for them to eat and go to the bathroom like puppies. He explains the house rules. Don't touch anything, don't bother him while he's working, and no loud noises ever. Then he leaves them for the next 6 hours. He heads to his secret lab to check out Dr. Nefario's new inventions, including an anti-gravity serum, while the girls accidentally find the entrance to the lab. When Gru sees the robot cookies in action, he realizes the girls are in the lab, asking about everything they see. One of them disintegrates Agnes's unicorn, and Gru sends three minions to get a new toy. They go outside dressed like a normal family but cause some chaos at the supermarket. Later, Gru finds out his new daughters made a mess at home, so he orders them to bed. The oldest says she'll never call him dad, and the youngest asks him to read a story, but he ignores them because he just needs them for his plan. At least the minions find a new toy for Agnes. The next morning, Gru asks the girls to sell the robot cookies, but it's time for their dance class, so he takes them to the dance school first. During class, Agnes makes him promise to come to the ballet recital. Then they head to Vector's fortress with a cart full of robot cookies, and the girls get inside quickly. This way, the robot cookies locate the shrink ray, disable the vault door, and make a hole in the wall so our protagonist can get in with a couple of minions. Things get tricky when the same robot cookies accidentally seal the hole, wrapping them inside and causing a bit of chaos. Luckily, Gru takes control and decides to escape through the front door. As they run, they bump into Vector, so they detour through a ventilation duct and accidentally fall into the same room as him. Miraculously, they manage to get out without being seen. On the way home, the girls spot an amusement park and beg Gru to go. At first, he doesn't want to, but then agrees, thinking it's the perfect way to ditch them since he doesn't need them anymore. But his plan fails because the girls are too young and need an adult to ride the roller coaster. Soon after, Agnes sees a giant unicorn plushie and begs for it. The girls hit the target, but the vendor says they had to knock it down, so he doesn't give them the prize. Gru decides to smash the place to grab the unicorn by force and make little Agnes happy. The best part is, he ends up having fun with them all afternoon. But when they get home, Dr. Nefario is furious because Gru shouldn't be getting distracted from his mission. Just then, Gru makes a video call to the director of the Bank of Evil to tell him he got the shrink ray and explains his plan, but the girls interrupt the presentation. This messes things up so much that the director denies the loan, saying Gru is old, distracted, and not as capable as the younger villains, reminding Gru of all his childhood traumas caused by his mom. With no other choice, Gru gathers the minions to tell them what happened and that they don't have enough money for the moon heist. Luckily, the three girls hear this and give him all their savings to help out. Seeing this, the rest of the minions chip in with their belongings, so they all start working with cheap, recycled materials and anything they can find to build the rocket. Time passes with their daily routine, and Gru starts to enjoy having the girls around. Unfortunately, Dr. Nefario doesn't like this relationship since it's distracting Gru from the original plan. Meanwhile, the director of the Bank of Evil meets with his son, who turns out to be Vector, whose real name is Victor. His dad scolds him for losing the shrink ray, and Victor promises to get it back soon. Instead of perfecting his plan, Gru agrees to read a bedtime story to please his adoptive daughters. At first, he's reluctant, but he ends up enjoying the moment with them. After leaving their room, the scientist reminds Gru that he's scheduled to go to the moon in 48 hours. Gru tries to convince him to delay the launch since it coincides with the girls' ballet recital, but he can't change his mind. The next day, Gru is having tea with the girls when the orphanage lady shows up to take them back. She says she got Gru's letter, and even though Gru is confused, he lets them go. This is actually Dr. Nefario's doing to force Gru to focus on the plan. Over the next few days, our favorite villain feels really sad about being separated from the girls. Still, he prepares for the mission, and when the launch time comes, one of the minions slips the ballet recital ticket into Gru's pocket. As the countdown ends, the rocket takes off successfully. Vector shows up at the right moment to try and stop them, but Gru knocks him out with a magnetic gun. So now Gru reaches the moon and uses the shrink ray to reduce it to the size of an orange. He's thrilled until he sees the ballet recital ticket floating around. Realizing he still has time to make it, he speeds back while the girls hold on to hope he'll show up in the audience. Dr. Nefario discovers the shrink ray's effect is temporary, so he tries to contact Gru, but can't reach him, so he decides to find Gru quickly. The ballet recital starts, and Vector mysteriously shows up in the audience. Luckily, Gru lands just in time and rushes in, only to find the show has ended. In the reserve seat, he finds a note from the girls, which is actually from Vector, revealing he's kidnapped the girls in exchange for the moon. Gru rushes back to his mansion and hands over the moon. The problem is Vector decides to keep the girls for a bit longer, infuriating Gru. Amazingly, Gru dodges Vector's attacks and the vicious shark in the fortress. Vector escapes in a flying pod, and Gru tries to cling on but loses strength and falls. Fortunately, Dr. Nefario and the minions arrive just in time to rescue him. A new chase begins as the scientist explains that shrunken objects return to their original size based on their mass. This means bigger objects revert faster. The moon starts growing, hitting Vector and rolling through the pod, causing massive damage. The girls are freed and find an escape hatch. Gru urges them to jump to his ship, assuring them he'll protect them. The two younger girls jump, but Margot hesitates. When she finally decides to jump, Vector grabs her. Luckily, the moon accidentally knocks Vector away, making him fall. Margot ends up dangling from a rope and Gru goes after her, but they both fall unexpectedly. But in a miraculous moment, the minions create a human chain to save them. Meanwhile, the moon keeps growing until it hits a button, sending it back to space, trapping Vector on it. Back home, everything returns to normal. Gru reads a new bedtime story he wrote, reflecting his new life with the girls. The three girls put on a special ballet show for the minions, their adoptive dad, and their new grandma, who finally admits she's proud of Gru. music changes, and everyone convinces Gras to join the stage for a grand performance with his forbidden dance moves, becoming one big happy family. That was Despicable Me 1. Don't forget to like, comment on what movies you want to see next, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next videos.